Morning.
Hello. This, I think is one for one of your inmates.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, we'll call the meeting to order, and the first thing on the agenda is the agenda approval.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Thank you, Steve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Public input. I see nobody here for public input, so we will move on to the consent agenda. Any changes or corrections? With none, if I can get a motion.
I'll move.
Thank you, Steve.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We have motion approved. On to old business. Rental property discussion.
As a result of our special meeting, there was some request to have a more in-depth conversation about the properties at this meeting, and looking at the budgets and sort of operations through year end, and sort of see where all of the things are at. There's a few things that I notice right away is that some of the costs are really escalating beyond what potentially is reasonable. There has been a lot of vacancies which are impacting especially Meadowview and Meadows Edge. And then the trail of the accounts receivable is really upward in trajectory. So there's a few things that I think are all playing together. The board did approve a increase of 5% for the 2 and 3 bedroom rents for next year. And then I provided to you copies of the budgets that were submitted by D.W. Jones for approval, and there are a lot of issues with the budgets, a lot of issues. So as they stand right now, I think that well, as they stand right now, it is unlikely that the properties will be able to, in whole, cash flow. Some of them are worse than others. None of them, I shouldn't say that. Regency has the potential to show a net income after depreciation, but does not have enough money after depreciation to pay debt service. So other than that, none of the other properties after depreciation, and while that is a non-cash entry, that's not necessarily a bad thing. But the debt service, none of the properties right now would be able to make debt service with the net income that's being projected before depreciation. So there's some really significant concerns with the operations of the budget or the properties as they stand right now.
When you say that, is that inclusive of carrying accounts receivable like we were, or does that compound the problem?
Well, that makes it worse because most of the receivables that are there right now are going to be uncollectible. And so right now those are showing as revenue for 2025 that will ultimately be written off. So that's another $30,000. We also did receive, I believe I mentioned it in the director's report, that the revenue recapture account that was the HRAs was canceled or closed at the state level. So there's another 60-some thousand dollars worth of receivables that, you know, we wouldn't have gotten more than 5% of them at best, but it was a little bit, so we could have at least recouped that, a little bit of that, but that is completely, the account has been completely closed, so those resources are gone as well. In looking at a couple things, so the biggest concern I really have is staffing. The budget for the staffing for 2026, and that is 7% management fee, plus then the cost of on-site staffing is $176,529 between the 4 properties. In 2025, they're projecting that it's gonna be $148,000. And then in 2024, it was $123,000. So there's some really significant increases in the on-site staffing costs. And they don't seem to be aligning very well with the amount of work. So Cornerstone, for instance, is the one building, there's 2 buildings. One has all 1-bedroom apartments that are walk-up, so there's no public space in that one building. In the second building, it's 2 stories and it's 4 2-bedroom apartments. So you walk into the building and then there's a hallway that goes to the laundry room, and then the 2 apartments that are on the first floor, and then there's a hallway, and then stairs and a hallway that goes to the second. So there's hardly any public space, and the amount of costs that we have for on-site work is sort of ridiculous.
Plus, those units have had the same people in for a really long time, correct?
Yes.
So then what are the costs?
I'm not sure. Regency 2 also has a pretty stable rent history. Most of them have been long-term residents. There's 2 that are on turnover right now. That does have a little bit more common space because it's 3 floors. So there's a main entry and then the hallway to the apartments on each floor. And then there's a laundry room on the first floor. So there's a little bit more public space to be maintaining there, but there's not a whole lot of apartment turns that are required. The other 2 units, or the other 2 properties, Meadowview and Meadows Edge, they just got to, I think 1 apartment is open in each of them now, so they finally just got folks into them. But most of them are with a $99 deposit in exchange for a 1-year lease. Well, that's a problem. I'd rather go first month free and a full deposit than have a $99 deposit, because at least then, I mean, dollar-wise, it's relatively the same, right? $99 first month, it's relatively the same from a cost to entry for the tenant, but from a receivable or setting yourself up, we only have $99 then if they choose not to pay rent or do any, I mean, that doesn't even cover the cost of cleaning the apartment on a turn. So it's a good way to potentially fill the apartments, but for the long-term viability, it doesn't really do a lot.
And you don't know if they have the cash flow in their personal habits to actually pay the monthly rent. Where if you get a $1,000 deposit, you know, okay, at least you got 1 month's rent covered. Now you have no idea if you're gonna get anything beyond the $99.
Yeah.
So anyway, and some of the other things that I noticed is that they would put, for the vacancy rate, some of the units were booked at 1%, which was like Meadow Edge, which has historically been running at a 15%, and they put in a budget of a 1% vacancy. Well, that's not gonna happen. And then Regency, that has really stable, they put like an 11% vacancy rate. So it's like, well, why would you do that? One of the buildings, they put in the budgeted interest payment of $30,000 less than I'm projecting it to be. So, I mean, the budgets are just really not in very good shape. So that's sort of one concern I have. I have not had a chance to go over to the apartments yet and really look and see what kind of status it is. When I looked at the management plan, they did include that they were going to have one full-time person and 2 part-time people as staff, on-site staff. I don't think that they technically really have anybody on site at any of the properties. They have somebody who lives in town that drops by on occasion, but I don't think they have an actual resident or an on-site
Like
person.
regular office hours or anything
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
no.
I think that would be beneficial to have that capability.
So, and then I did also just look as in a, sort of looking at trending, and see the personnel in 21 and 22. When you had your own staff in 21, the cost of payroll and what we call management services was 79,000. In 22, it was 113,000. Granted, it's not necessarily apples and apples between what your own staff was doing and is capable of and what the D.W. Jones staff is doing and is capable of, but the properties, I don't really think can absorb this without you committing to subsidize pretty highly the cost of the operations as they are now. Or your other option would be to significantly increase the rents at Meadowview and Meadows Edge to help them cash flow to the point where they would at least be able to cover cost plus debt service, the principal portion of debt service. Depreciation is a paper entry, so if there's a loss after depreciation, that's not as damaging, other than it doesn't really provide you any opportunity to create reserves. I mean, in essence, what depreciation does is that if you charge that as an expense on your books and you get a net income after that, that depreciation being paper sort of ends up being in your cash flow and provides you the resources to be able to manage long-term and provide you some opportunity for replacement in the future. So it's important to try and get at least a portion of that depreciation covered. But that's, so anyway.
So how short are we total?
I took the budgets and fixed them based on what I thought would be appropriate, and I'm coming up with now these are just the 4 properties that I'm talking about. A net income of $64,834. The principal on debt service is $132,701. So that's what, about 70,000 short. And that's not covering depreciation, so that doesn't count depreciation at all.
So to correct this, like you say, raising rents would be one option.
Raising rents, the Cornerstone and Regency, as I was looking through the budgets, I discovered from 24 to 25 that the taxes on Regency dropped really significantly. So I thought it was an error, but I went and looked and found out that it became a LRC property, low-income residential classification. And so the requirement there is now, as a result of the preferential property tax treatment, that all residents have to be under 60% AMI. And
Did
Cornerstone.
that just automatically happen?
I don't know.
Because that should have been a board vote.
I don't know.
I think that's actually a classification issue in the assessor's office, very likely.
Okay,
There's a property classification of 4D, and then there's a 4D1. And for payable in 2025, this property has always been listed as 4D, low-income rental. But for 2025, it became a 4D1, which then kicks it into Minnesota Housing and the LRC property. And then there's additional requirements that are associated with those properties. I don't know if the assessor just looked through it and went, nope, this is classified incorrectly. If somebody asked for it, that was really prior to us, so I don't really know how it ended up there. It is a benefit in that we're gonna save another, about $5,000 in taxes for that property.
What's the address there?
501 Gilbert. So that's a beneficial, but it really does mean that we have to be really careful about rents at that particular property. Now Meadowview and Meadows Edge, we can go beyond the 5% that you already approved, add it to the one bedrooms as well. But given that the building just sort of filled with a bunch of people that signed one-year leases, it's really not gonna do us any good. Because we can't change rent until the end of their lease. So we have like 12 new residents or something, or 9 new residents in Meadows Edge, so we can't change rents on any of them anyway. So the point is we can increase rents, which will help us for next year, but for this year, it's really not gonna do a whole lot.
I don't know that we can increase them much more than we did, because
Yeah.
you do too much, you're gonna lose people.
Yep.
So you compound your problem.
Yeah, they're not, now that we're answering the HRA phone, we get a lot of calls for people who are looking for affordable rent. And even Meadowview and Meadows Edge, which are really relatively affordable, are too high. So, there's a lot of people who need a lot of more reasonable rents. So if we increase Meadowview and Meadows Edge, it's not gonna help.
Find it though, the ones that are pretty full.
Yeah, they are.
Has D.W. Jones started doing what we suggested a meeting or two back of cutting their internet for those who aren't paying their rent?
Well, I think so. In a follow-up conversation by email, I was told that they can't because they'd have to go into each apartment, and I said, no, that's not right.
the building was built different than that.
The building is different than that, and you have to go to this room, and then you can unplug it. And she said, Angie, who was here, said she was gonna go look at the building again to see if that was the case. But she hasn't confirmed one way or the other if she found out that, yes, it is able to do that, because
Those
we built it
delinquent
that way.
things paid, we don't have to worry about raising rents, and a lot of these things will be taken care of.
And She did respond to the questions that you had had about sort of their collection process. And basically, they are unwilling to go to collect, or to
Conciliation, correct?
conciliation court or do any judgments, seek any judgments. They believe that based on what their collection people say, is that only about 30% of the claims end up with a judgment, and only about 30% of those end up in recovery. So they just said that it doesn't make sense cost effectively to pursue any of those judgments.
How are they justifying going from 148,000 to 175,500? That's over 30% of more than we even use for a levy.
Yes. And there is no justification other than the budgets that they prepared and provided to us.
So they say it doesn't justify going to it, but that's assuming that they're average. I like to think they're better than average.
Well, in our experience, we haven't done very many. And I personally, when the HRA was managed other places, I personally didn't do any of the judgments, but what I understood to be true when Carolyn did them is that most of the time, the tenant never shows up, and so it is, the staff person that shows up, they receive the judgment. So it's the cost of the attorney, and potentially, if you get a system down, you might be able to sort of figure that out without necessarily having an attorney. And again, these things are conversations that we can have about the collectability or the collections. That's not really gonna help the budget. So that's,
It's part of the problem though, because if you're not getting decent tenants and your accounts receivable are high, you can bet your repairs and maintenance is gonna be through the roof too. So it all kind of plays together.
The biggest challenge is that in paying for staff and a management fee, we're paying about $75,000 to $100,000 more than we were when we were managing it ourselves, or if we did do it ourselves. So that management fee is what's eating up any possibility of break even with those operations. And this budget's fine, but a summary budget that shows me the operations that they're managing, one would be, I'm trying to figure out what the bottom line is, and
Well, the landlords that own property in this area are not writing off this high a percentage, or they wouldn't be in the business.
I've actually had conversations with a landlord that wasn't very selective on tenants, or however you'd want to say that. And he said he had lots of accounts receivable, spent a lot of time trying to collect. But he did say when he went aggressively after collecting it, things changed. But it takes time and effort.
your single-family rentals, everybody's current. So, right now you have 3 properties. Those will actually do fine on. I mean, they're right at break even with the costs associated with them. And granted, the costs are significantly less with those, but we don't have a collection problem with those properties, all 3 of them.
I was actually on the HRA board for several years before I became a county commissioner with Mary. And then after I became a commissioner and we have expanded our properties, we had our own property manager that had relationship with the renters. And that ended up being much more successful in collecting rents. And so I'm not willing to subsidize this with more levy dollars, because that's not the answer, because it just then keeps going up for the levy. So as a board, we need to decide an alternative, whatever that word means.
Yeah.
Well, I don't really think the public is very empathetic toward a lot of the people's situations, but I don't think they're overwhelmingly in favor of a huge levy increase for subsidizing
I would agree with
something
you.
that just isn't efficient, so to say.
Yep.
So, yeah, something's gonna have to change, and it's just finding that right solution, and it's gonna take time. It's not gonna happen the first month, even if something switches. I mean, we're not gonna notice a huge influx of money, but I'm disappointed to see more money going out and not the revenue coming back in, just to basically cover the costs of the buildings themselves and the properties. It's disappointing.
And that really is the intended goal of especially Meadowview and Meadows Edge. They were ran, the projections were run with the expectation that they would pay their full fare, meaning that they would not seek reduced tax rates, that they would pay their full share, but that they would break even. And so we got those outside resources to keep those rents affordable long-term, and that they would pay their fair share, that they wouldn't have an unfair advantage of any of the other properties that are in the community, and that they would break even providing safe sanitary, you know, what's your motto say, or your mission, safe sanitary and affordable housing for the residents of the community. And properly run, it's always going to be sort of a dance where sometimes it might not go quite as well as other years, just because, you know, tenants are tenants. But generally, there was this trend that it was doing those things, that it was paying its bills and then moving along, and everything worked pretty well. The last few years, that has not been the case, and this year, based on the budget, it's not even close. One of the things that I do think that we can do is Meadow Edge, which is the second building, was on a variable interest, and the interest rate really went up for just in August. So that resulted in a payment increase of a couple $1,000s a month. I think that we could have some conversations with the bank to see whether or not we might be able to figure out a way to either refinance or something so that we can get the interest rate down some. That will help that property some, but again, that's not enough to make huge difference in, you know, the budget in a total. So I think that that's one of the things that I definitely am gonna work on, that will help, and that will help that debt service component of it. But, you know, we just really, really, really need to be thinking long and hard about how do we wanna move forward with these.
Well, I guess from just looking at it from a business standpoint, if this was a business, it's a failing business. Just plain and simple. There's no other way to look at it. Whatever's being done just isn't quite adequate for these properties. So we're gonna have to do something with some sort of change, whether it's a change in management or it's a change in how things operate, whether we try to do something more in-house, so to say, or something along those lines. We need to find out what our contract says, for one thing, if we choose to go a different route. But yeah, it's not successful.
So if we went back to in-house management, you know, how would we accomplish that, and what would that look like? What would it take? That's, if we knew tomorrow who was going to do, run that, and we were confident with that person we hired, I think I'd be all in. But
Yeah, and looking at the budget projection that's coming to us, I mean, that's a significant amount of money. And are we getting what we feel is good value for that money? I mean, we're not generating income to cover our costs. Not short term, but not even long term either, so it doesn't look like it's really working out all that well.
With in-house management then, what would be the function of the HLDC in Mary? Would be just primarily EDA then, no more HRA?
You would have a couple different options that you could pursue. One is that we could have a conversation with HLDC and see if they'd be willing to hire a property management, and we would just include it as part of our overall management. So it would still be umbrellaed under our organization, and we'd have one component of that. And there would be a supervisor that would do that. The challenge with, and the other option is that you as an HRA could hire an individual and do that. The challenge that enters there is that you really need a property manager who is not necessarily skilled or capable of doing all of the other HRA organizational things. So you'd still have to have some relationship or something that would manage the management part of it. So likely, my role would be, under that scenario, it wouldn't be all that dissimilar from having D.W. Jones, where we do the overall management and on-site oversight, watch the budgets, and then you'd have a property manager that would function doing that property management. So that's kind of the two scenarios. Or you could select a completely different property management firm that may or may not provide you different services. So you really have kind of three options on what direction to go. And then it would be how do you navigate what that looks like?
Okay, under that first option, with the current amount that the county is paying, 200,000, I think it is, plus the 7% D.W. Jones gets, would that be adequate for that first option?
Well, I think that, yes. Let me preface it that I'm talking off the cuff, and so I have to sort of think, knowing I have two board members also sitting here. Now, so my expectation is that an individual could be hired to do property management that would not be as much as the payroll that we're seeing right now as a direct service. And I don't think that we would need to increase exponentially or even take 7% as management, because we're already providing a lot of those services. I mean, the work that I'm doing now, poring over your budgets, isn't part of that 7%, and it's part of what we're doing as our normal contract. So I'd have to run numbers and figure it all out, but I don't think it would be, well, I know it's not gonna be $176,000 because that's a little lot.
Seems like it.
And the critical, and the other component is that we could potentially have some cost sharing because, as you know, we have our own apartment building. And so we could potentially do some cost sharing where we could have some of the costs, for instance, snow plowing. In addition to all of these costs, you still pay for snow plowing, lawn mowing, over and above what you're already paying for the property management. And so maybe if we have enough units, we could buy a lawnmower and mow our own lawns, and I don't know if that's true or not, I'd have to run the numbers. But there is a potential that we could look at some cost sharing between the two agencies to become more efficient. So,
So we already know that the proposed budget for '26 is not gonna make ends meet. The county is obligated to pay the bills. And at this point, that money would have to come out of fund balance.
Yeah, so it's like if we stay with the current situation, we aren't covering costs, so the dollars are gonna have to come from,
Well, they're gonna have to come from the county.
yeah,
So
whether
we're
it's
either
us or
gonna have to
increasing.
raise the levy next year
Yep.
to subsidize, and I agree with Steve, that is not what the public wants.
you could, as a short-term stopgap, I mean, you could use your economic development funding set aside, but what that does is it takes money away from other projects that could
Right.
happen. And so you're, you know, solving a short-term or
Yeah.
problem with the long-term benefits of having those resources available, because it's not really going to come back to you, and it's not really going to increase economic vibrance in the in the county.
And it's not solving a problem.
It's not solving
It's
a
just putting a
problem.
Band-Aid on it.
The only advantage of that is that it doesn't require you to immediately raise the levy, because you do already have that set aside. It really is, it would be unfortunate, but just as another option for the
And-
short term.
I think that is a last resort, one-time deal, and until we find a solution that would, you know, remedy this. And that's my thought is, I don't know if the situation we're in now is gonna get any better. And then, so that's the option of another management company or hiring somebody to do it. And I don't know who else is available as far as a different management
Yeah,
company.
I know, that's what I was
Or if
gonna
their
say.
fees would be less.
There's that too. And would they do a better job? And I think if we hired somebody, we would have more hands-on. Definitely Mary would have more hands-on. We might be able to have find where some of this costs are going and correct it type of a thing. So I'm open to, I guess, any ideas, but it sounds like, to me, maybe hiring somebody ourselves would be the way to go.
I guess
Or
I'd-
HLDC hiring somebody and partnering. I'll definitely in agreement with that too, if we partnered, you know, because like you say, you have a couple apartments already too that need to be managed, so we could go hand in hand.
I'd like to see some cost comparisons of those options that were discussed, to see if it makes sense or not. Granted, nothing's ever set in stone until it actually happens, but it just helps everybody, I think, wrap your head around what the what the cost of the options are and what the benefits of those options are. And if none of those options are chosen, then that's just the way it is. But I think we need to see something as far as dollars and cents wise before we can make an adequate decision.
What is our contract for, is it 3-month notice?
Well, you're gonna have to have the county attorney look at it, but, the way that I read it is that there is no cancellation during the initial term, which expires December 31st of 2026. That the agent can cancel with a 60-day written notice, but that, the HRA can't until the initial term is done.
All right.
Yeah, that's how I read it.
Is there any
Um,
performance requirements?
Not really.
No.
So, again, I'm a layperson, and so I don't know if the language is correct the way it's worded. The other thing that I was gonna bring out as part of the contract is, on the Cornerstone budget, they're increasing their management fee. That property only is at a rate per occupied unit. And the contract that we signed has a management fee of $75 per occupied unit per month. And it doesn't have any terms in there about an inflator. And they somewhere increased the rate to 79, and this year they're asking for it to be 83. So, that's another issue I had with the contract, is that I didn't see any language in there about them being eligible to increase the cost of the management. They stayed stable at the 7% for the other 3 properties, that hasn't changed. But Cornerstone has had an inflator, which makes absolutely no sense, because they have 9 units and they're all the same. 1 unit turned in the last year, and the rest of the, so I don't know why it would really, anyway. So that was one of the other things about the contract, is that I noticed that they had inflated it, and there was no inflator in the contract that I could see, so.
There's gotta be performance requirements in there and stuff like that, though.
Well, again, it's gonna require somebody
Yeah.
with that expertise, because it's beyond what I see.
So between the staffing expense and the management fee, how much are those two?
100, the budget for 2026 is 100 and, just,
175, 529.
176, 529,
Okay.
between those two.
And then like I've said too, my only fear from the perspective of HLDC is we really didn't want to get extensively involved in managing and operating apartments. That's really not in our mission statement. I mean, I guess you can flex it and bend it a little bit to make it fit, but it's really not a core function.
Yeah.
Our core function is to make sure they get built, and that's it.
Kinda wish we weren't in that business either.
No, it doesn't feel so
I
good.
mean, the fact that we're managing one already, but, I still, and I say this all the time, Mary, is that long-term, I wish we had none. But I get short-term, we're trying to solve a problem and create inventory of housing in the community, and somebody's gotta do it.
Well, the other option is you could sell them.
I was just gonna ask that question.
I mean, there is nothing,
Aren't there some restrictions on 1 or 2 of the properties?
But we wouldn't have to sell all of them. I'm not sure I want to sell any of them, because then you don't have any, at least now we have say in how the apartments are run and the type of rent we're accepting.
went online today.
Didn't seem to matter.
It didn't.
No,
No.
well, it did at one point. I mean, it really did. I went online this morning just to double check to see if, in fact, they were the apartments were being advertised at a $99 deposit. And I noticed that D.W. Jones manages 9 properties in Park Rapids. Pleasant Court, and then Meadowview and Meadows Edge are the market rate, and then all the rest of them are income restricted units that they manage, just as a informational piece. But yes, you can sell them. Cornerstone is still under some reporting, and would require Minnesota Housing to provide approval. And based on this LRC thing that I just found out with the property taxes, I'd have to double check about Regency. So those two may require some hoops in order to be able to actually sell them. Meadowview and Meadows Edge, all of the restrictions that would have been associated with them are gone. And so you would have the potential to market and sell those. If you would,
Those probably would be the logical ones if you did.
yeah. So, I mean, that is your other option, is that you could sell them.
Well, I like Steve's idea about having, things put down on paper. That would be a nice option to see on paper too. We need to explore every single option.
Maybe certainly can put it on the agenda, at HLTC meeting for discussion to see if they would entertain doing that. And then if they did, you could reduce it to paper on what it would look like, see if it works.
There's a chance if you sell those properties that they create the same kind of a problem that another
I
property
know.
has.
I totally agree with you,
Yeah.
but we should put every option that we're
There's,
exploring on the paper.
there's too much administrative expense against these
Yes.
properties, the way they're being managed right now. That's pretty simply the first thing to be addressed.
And what about the city HRA? I mean, is there interest in them, with them to piggyback onto some other sort of operation for management of their properties as well?
There has been in the past.
Okay.
Our problem is we'd be entering something new again
Yes.
until we established and we're comfortable enough with that. I don't know that I would even go down that path for at least a year.
Yeah,
Well, I was just looking, is there a way to reduce some costs that wouldn't be a burden overall, long-term, that, for a management opportunity?
There are some benefits with the city HRA is that they actually have a lot of equipment already.
Who manages their, they go through CAS HRA, don't they?
Well, they used to,
Oh, okay.
but they hired Scott Wilson independently as their executive director. And that was effective July 1st, I think. And I don't know how effective
Yeah, okay.
that is,
Yeah.
what that relationship is.
They haven't had time to get any sort of track record there.
Right, but that is another option that provides, again, economies of scale, is that you get to a certain point where that administrative pieces exponentially get cheaper and cheaper by the number of units that you manage. And so
Yeah.
there are some advantages to
You do
those.
end up with a lack of attention to detail if you get too many moving parts in the properties and whatnot, so we need to be careful of that.
Yes.
Okay.
So I guess we'll ask Mary to put some stuff together for us.
So you did approve the rent increases already, so those will go into effect. I would suggest that we not approve the rest of the budgets as they have been presented. I do need to go back to them and have them correct at a minimum the several mistakes that are in the budget. And then potentially we can have them send revisions for next month. And then I'll do some research on some of these other potential options that might be available.
My frustrating part with the contract is, if you write a budget and you see the budget doesn't work, wouldn't you present some solutions to make the budget work? I would think, but
Yes.
And another thing that could be done, like I say, we could have this on the HLDC agenda to see if there's an appetite for expanding what we're doing with Pinecrest. And if they agree to explore that, Mary could put some preliminary numbers on paper, and you would at least have a comparison to what you're dealing with now. Yeah, and then outside of that, if you decided to go a different way, you'd have to have the contract looked at and figure out how that works.
when Meadows View and Meadows Edge was built, we built it to be a benefit to the community for people that worked in the community. I think that mission is still really valuable. And I do agree with Jeff that we could be creating a larger problem if we decided to sell. So hopefully we can find a workable solution that solves all the problems.
Yeah, the intended benefit of providing those two
Yes.
properties might just be washed away overall in the end
Yeah.
if we choose to sell them. There is no real true value in being put back in. It's just gonna be back to, it's just business as usual. I need to make money and cover my expenses. Yeah.
So are we done with the rental property discussion?
I just have one more question. So, working with DW Jones, do we have to approve a budget from them?
No, you have to approve a budget for the organization,
Okay.
which is kind of dependent on that proposed
Yes.
bottom line.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, so part of your agency-wide budget includes that rental income net or whatever. So your agency-wide budget is dependent to a certain degree on what we think is going to be the activity of the organization. But again, we can talk about the agency-wide budget and so.
Okay.
Just one brief comment. You know, when you look at the sheet that Jeff has up right now, I mean, really occupancy isn't all that bad,
No,
you know? So it's an operating issue.
yes.
Yeah, really, it's just
And
metal
loss,
edge.
what the write-offs and whatnot, yeah. But the occupancy is relatively good.
Yeah, you know, if it's, standard book of business is between 5% and 7%. I mean, you know, and so that's relatively where they're at, except for Meadows Edge, which
Yeah.
had its sort of other unique challenges. But, so they're really operating about where you would expect them to be, from an occupancy standpoint, yeah. Mhm.
All right, then. We'll move on to new business, the 2026 budget.
So, before you is the budget, that I had prepared, using very conservative or, sort of cash net for rental income. And then, again, looking at the other costs that are associated with it. So, again, really pretty conservative. I don't see, anything that's significantly, other than the rental, which could have a very significant impact one way or the other. We're in October, so we can still, wait. The levy has already been approved and taken care of, so it's to the county for our request. I have no expectations for changing that number, so this is what it is, but we could wait until we can get some additional information on that rental item, if you're more comfortable with that.
I thought it looked good. Any further questions or? Okay. So we'll move on. So we don't have to approve this budget?
You know, I think we'll wait until next month and just see if we can get, that rental better vetted out before we do that, so.
7B, agency-wide HRA-EDA financial reports.
So, in a nerdy kind of way, this is kind of exciting. we have financial statements that are coming out of our own accounting system that are accurate as of August. We don't have the August activity for the enterprise fund in there, but everything else is through the end of September. Couple questions that I just really overall want is, we have the ability to present this information in a variety of ways. So this is what I thought might be of use and interesting to you. The first page is the balance sheet, and what we've done is created the general fund, which is our normal operations. The MERL account is those contracts for deed that you have 7 or 8 left. And then the enterprise fund is all of the rental activities, so it's the 4 multifamily as well as the 3 single-family rentals in columnar form. So then you can see, in this case, the balance sheet and activity under each of those funds, if you will, and then a total for the agency-wide. The next form, or the next sheet, is an agency-wide financial. Again, put together, so this is the revenue and expenditures by column. And so here you can then see each of the rental incomes that are coming in and where they're going out and where the expenses and incomes are by each of the fund codes, and then gives you a total for the agency-wide. So it's really that big picture information that you can look at. And then the last page that we have is just a summary of each of the properties. So this here is just the enterprise fund, and it is showing the expenses by each of the properties that you own. So you can get a quick snapshot of, how is X or Y property doing just on a snapshot. And then what I did is, you'll notice that on this page, after the first 5 columns, you'll see the HRA-EDA managed properties. So if you're just interested in what the single family stuff is doing, you can find that column and look at it and see that. And then on the next page, there is a column or a subtotal that shows the D.W. Jones managed properties. So you can see in, the 4 properties that they're managing, and then the total is everything. So, and just again, in a 2-page format that will show you. So the question I have for you, I wasn't really gonna talk about the details so much as, do you like what you see? And is it useful? Is there something else that you would say, I really like this, but I'd like to see X, Y, or Z?
I guess for me, I like this, it hits the high spots, the high points, and how much detail do we need? I mean, if we needed more detail, we could always ask you something specific.
Right.
I would suggest that you put the properties that D.W. Jones manages all on one page.
Okay,
So I can, that essentially be 2 pages.
okay,
Otherwise, I have to go back and forth.
okay.
And I like the totals. I like that final column being a total. It's easy to read.
Good.
How easy would it be to add a cash flow part down below?
It would be a different form, or a different report, but I can do that.
Yeah,
Okay.
because that's what really matters. I mean,
Yes, we have the capability of creating a cash flow report, so I can add that.
yeah. Yeah, just a summary, working off what you have here, just going a step further.
Okay then.
Going back to the contract with D.W. Jones, and you're saying that it's through 2026. So if, essentially, they get paid first, correct? So whatever is left over, whatever is short, then the county has to come up with, right?
Mhm.
They're entitled to their reimbursable costs and the,
7%.
and the
Right.
management fee as agreed.
Mhm.
I just sent the contract, I just read the termination clause. I think there's some gray area. I just sent it off to John and asked him some questions about it, so I'm less concerned about,
And we
That than
had,
anything.
the attorney's office looked at it prior to us signing.
it did.
Mhm.
Yeah, he has to look at it and have a discussion about our concerns and see what our options are.
Okay, there's nothing else on the agency-wide HRA-EDA financial reports. We'll move
No,
on.
and if you, as you look at it and you think, oh, there's something else, I've got the change to the D.W. Jones and then adding the cash flow statement, but if there's any other kind of information, and again, this is at the 10,000-foot view level. We have the capacity to get you into the minutia, but unless you have a question about something looking odd, I did not include a budget column. So on the statement of activities, that includes the, and I didn't know how important a budget column was for you or not, or at what level. So that's something that you can think about and see, I really do want to see some information by budget. We can add that too.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to banking relationships.
So we've had some conversations about the fact that we've got a ridiculous number of checking accounts, savings accounts, under our name and D.W. Jones. So D.W. Jones manages 2 accounts per property, and those won't change, so we'll always have the 8, and those are held at Citizens right now. But our general management accounts, we have 2 at Northwoods. One is a Merle account and one is a general account. There is been some discussion back and forth at the state level whether or not those funds have to be segregated or not. The Merle funds have to be segregated or not. Minnesota Housing really does feel like they need to be, so that's why we've always had a separate Merle account. But then we have 5 at Citizens. We have a Merle secured money market, and then we have a regular checking, and then we have our security deposits, which by law has to be a separate account. And then we have the general checking. So my question is, we can, at the best, get, I think, to 3 accounts. One for Merle, one for the security deposits, and then one for our general operations. Do you want us to go through a full RFP process? Or do you want us to just move accounts to the bank that makes the most sense? So we have not done, as far as I can tell, I don't know when there was a banking RFP done. I have no idea when that could have happened, so,
I think that would help us make our decisions as to which ones to keep.
okay.
That's my opinion.
To do an RFP?
Yeah.
What if the RFP comes back and we don't like,
Don't take it.
yeah, I know we don't take it, so is it worth the work if we already know where we wanna have the accounts?
Right. And the other thing is, do you wait a little bit to see where we're at with the other piece we were discussing?
We have gotten all of the accounts reconciled. We're in the accounting system and we're in the current year. So.
Yay!
Hallelujah. And all of the bank accounts are reconciled through September. So from a keeping them perspective, most of them have little to no activity. So if you want to just hit the pause button and just wait for a little while about doing an RFP and reducing the bank accounts, that's fine. It's really not going to cause us a lot of consternation to do that. But we have had a few conversations about the fact that we have a lot of bank accounts. And so I wanted to be respectful of listening to you. But we don't have to do anything right now if you just want to hit pause and wait for a while. Because it's not really going to cause us much work to do that.
Because the reason I'm thinking is, I mean, if we go down the path of bringing everything in-house, maybe just reset at that point.
It's a good point. So board consensus is we'll just pause for now?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
7D, new project partnership.
So Ted had called and he was approached after an HRDC meeting this month, just a couple weeks ago, that the city of Nevis has some interest in pursuing a partnership for a school build. As you recall, you still own one lot in the city of Nevis on Evergreen Circle or Court, or I think it's Court. And as part of history, the HRA purchased a few of the lots in that particular development and did build with the high school at one point in Nevis. And so there has been some interest about the potential of doing that again. What I said is that I think it's the community needs to sort of come and ask specifically what they're maybe interested in. I have not heard from them yet.
Okay.
So, but I just wanted to let you know that I am following up on that. If they do, and particularly it's going to be the school that is going to need to drive that. Right now, they have been building in the storage area of the lumberyard. You've noticed stuff going on there for several years. And so then it's the school that really needs to decide whether or not they have the capacity and the students to do something different again. And I think that it behooves them to be able to go to the city and then the city to come to us. And then, because if the school isn't an interested partner, it's just a lot of wasted energy and effort.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, so it was John and Levi Hare from the HRDC staff had approached me that night. The next morning, I wanted to call David that night, but it was kind of late, so I called David then first thing in the morning. Then I had the Public Safety and Transportation meeting, so I filled in Jeff and Steve was there. Then I got a hold of Mary, then after I talked to Mary, then I talked to John again and basically told him that the ball's in your court. It sounds like we've got favorable, feelings from everybody here that we all think it seems like a good idea. So, but I said, you guys basically have to come to us formally and request this kind of stuff, but I said, it sounds like a great idea.
Did I hear correctly that this has been done before with the same sort of process, or, okay, so the means is there, it's just the proper channel of
Yeah.
requesting and verifying everything needs to happen.
So, one of the challenges is that with very small class sizes, it becomes very difficult to build a house in 9 months. So then the question becomes, do you do it over multiple years, or do you hire a contractor to finish it? So that's just the process part of it. The other part is the paying for the construction financing. At one point, the HRA had more than enough internal resources where you could have just funded that. That is not the case anymore, and so you'd probably have to get some sort of, if it was our project, as it had been in the past, you'd have to get some construction financing, and a year long gets kind of expensive. So there would be some details that we'd really need to work out at the front end, but I think that it has the potential to be a really great project.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you have to have a licensed professional do now, so
Right,
the
yeah.
school wouldn't be capable of doing all those things.
Basically, it's just construction. I mean, the carpentry work is really about the only thing that students can do anymore. They can do some wire runs if there's a licensed electrician on site, and most of the plumbing they can't even do anymore.
I know.
So do you have an idea what a range of what this would sell for? And it was, because originally we liked that idea because it was an affordable housing option.
And I think that's what the city of Nevis was looking at, is something in their city limits that would be affordable.
Okay,
That's kind of what John had told me.
because Park Rapids currently is building a house on their property. There's a sign up if you're interested, call.
This would not be an affordable alternative.
Okay,
Um,
are you looking at the foundation and the well and the septic, making it
Well,
not
it would
affordable?
be, it would be on municipal services, so there
Okay.
wouldn't be a well and septic.
Yep,
The challenge is what Steve talked about, is that really the kids can only really provide carpentry
Yeah.
skills anymore, so you end up subbing it all out anyway. And, it is not where the electrician can come in 2 days and punch it out. Because even if they come, there is some expected instruction that goes to the kids, because that's part of why you're doing it, is to encourage them into the trades. So, number one, you have to find like an electrician who is willing to work with the kids and do the stuff, and then the plumber and those kinds of things, and then you don't necessarily get really great prices unless the contractor is really committed to the program and provides discounts. So it's really, years ago when kids could, sort of do it all, it was a affordable alternative, but that's not so much anymore. It's really about the educational opportunity. Likely these would be they'd be 275, 300,000, I would imagine.
Yeah, if you're doing something like this, you'd almost be wanting to do something like on County Line Estates. A sub come in, build us back home, sell the lot to him at a reasonable price, and then let him sell the house,
You have tried to sell the lot a few times. You have $17-ish thousand into it. So you've tried to sell it for that price, and that has been a non-starter. One of the other issues is on the county pictorial looking down thing. It appears that the neighbor has encroachment and built a garage on your on your property, which could be alleviated if you did like a more smaller house, you know, some of those ones that, you know, the tiny home, and you could sort of redo it. But I've never pursued the encroachment issue because we've never really had a serious buyer. So that would have to be worked out as part of this process too.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not, because, I mean, those lines on GIS are not always real accurate when they.
That's not,
overlay.
is it in the city of Park Rapids?
No, it's in the
Nevis.
city of
I know in
Nevis.
I know in Park Rapids there's an offset.
And one of the times when the property was listed, Eric Wolf went over there and he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's over. So he's,
Is
based
there-
on where the post or the marker is, he said, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's over, so
Is there a time limit on pursuing that?
probably,
No.
no.
No?
The expert says no, so we're good.
Well, the guy who will make up an answer says no. That can be reconciled.
Yeah, well, you know, we figured it out. So anyway, I just want to let you know that we are getting some, requests for partnership in other parts of the county. And so we're working hard to do things outside of just Park Rapids.
Well, you know, Steve, if there was a house actually on the lot, maybe someone would be interested.
yeah, I know.
Because people
I-
like to move, a lot of
Yep.
people don't want to hassle with trying to build something.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that it's not a bad.
No, I know
that's
you're
not a
not.
good idea. But there's a lot more costs associated
Yeah.
with it that just doesn't appear up front in the text, you know, so, that's all.
Yeah, and you know, if the HRA really wanted to meet the need of the city of having a more affordable house, we probably could do that too, but we'll just see where the conversation goes. So,
We're at square one.
we're at square one right now anyway.
All right, thank you.
By the way, there's that adverse possession, that's 15 years.
Is it?
Yeah.
Huh? So,
You don't do something within 15 years.
how much tax do we pay on this lot?
It's Evergreen Court in
Much.
Nevis.
I wouldn't think much, but
It's
hey,
on the
we
south side
we
of
need money this
34.
next year.
I don't think, yeah, it's in the Haas edition, it's that one right there, yep. Jeff's got it up, so he might be able to.
Is it in, I don't remember where it is. Is it in a decent location?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's in a very nice location, and as I said, the, school and HRA built, there's what, about 10 houses, 5 houses in there? The school and the HRA built maybe 4 or 5 of them that are in that. It's in the Haas edition of Nevis, it's on the end of a cul-de-sac, so
Oh.
it's a very nice,
Okay.
it's a very nice area, so, yeah.
All righty. Now we're on to the director's report.
I don't remember what I told you. Oh, we did, the property that is, across from Cornerstone. After your last meeting, I did contact the person and said, okay, here's what the sale price is, or sale process is. And I said, if you really want to pursue it, this is what we'll have to do, and they didn't get back to me, so I made an executive decision and decided that we have enough other things going on, so we really don't need to be dealing with that property. if we do need some cash flow, we can look at something different, but for right now, I thought I'd let it be. And then just as a reminder that, as part of the audit, I did go and try and get a confirmation from MMB on the balance of our, revenue recapture, and they said that our account does not exist. So, as a result, we're going to have to completely write that off of the books. Last year, I did set up allowances for all of it, so we already have it financially off of our books. It'll be both the plus and minus will come off, so there won't be a net income impact. It'll just go away at the end of this year, so.
Was
Last
this a
year.
legislative decision? They just didn't want to finance the office staff? That keeps track of this, do you think?
No.
Okay.
I think that as part of one of the transitions, that MMB became aware that you didn't have your own staff anymore,
Oh.
and the account was closed.
Oh, so they're still doing this?
Yes.
They didn't end the program? Okay, that explains it.
That's just my guess. I don't
Okay.
know that for sure. That kind of program still exists, but,
Okay.
your account was closed, or it doesn't exist, so. That's all I have.
Alrighty. Well, if there's nothing else, I'll get a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Thank you, Shar.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Where is that lot at in Nevis?
It's very close to the shop.
Haas